All right. I want to welcome on my next guest, two-time Super Bowl champion, Jim McMahon. Jim, how's everything going?
Well, doing great. Sitting out here in sunny Arizona, nice and hot. Not too worried about this COVID-19 and this heat. So
Yeah.
things are
Yeah.
good, right?
Good. Glad to hear it. Yeah, it's a wild time we're in right now. So we're about a little over a month removed from the draft. Did you have any initial takeaways just from how it went, or any of the guys you like the fits?
I don't even know who got drafted. I don't keep up with all that anymore.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. So I have a question. So some questions just about your early career. So what made you choose BYU?
Well, when I was going to college, I I really wanted to play baseball.
Oh, interesting.
And I told all the schools that I visited that I wanted to play both sports. And the majority of them said, no, you're not going to be able to play both sports. And so the two schools that actually said I could play both were BYU and Nevada, Las Vegas.
Oh, wow.
And Vegas happened to be my last recruiting trip. And that's when I came home, I said, Dad, I'm going to Vegas. And my dad said, no, you're not. He said, it's not a big enough school. This and that. He was worried about me continuing on with my career. And I said, look, I know I can get to the next level, but I think Vegas will be a lot more fun than BYU will.
Yeah.
Sure, it would have been, but things worked out okay. I ended up going to BYU. I only played baseball for my freshman year. I played about 10 games, but they didn't tell me I couldn't get out of spring football practice. So I had to go. I play a game of a doubleheader. I was playing in the outfield and throwing the ball from the outfield, throwing the ball from the pockets, two different motions. And I was having some early arm troubles anyway, so I decided – after about 10 games of running up and down that hill and then going to football. And since football was my scholarship, I just had to drop the baseball. But I still enjoy it, still watch the games, especially during the playoffs. But that's the reason I ended up at BYU.
Cool. Is it true that you played punter?
Well, I made the varsity my freshman year as the punter, but I was still a third-team quarterback at the time. But in order to make the varsity squad, I needed to do something. So I always was able to kick the ball okay. So that's how I made the varsity.
That's wild. And then so fast forward to when you guys are playing SMU. When you're down 3 scores, barely any time left in the game. How did you guys muster up that win? How did that happen?
A lot of divine intervention, I think. I mean, we had no business winning that game, but we didn't. I know I didn't play good early on in the football game, and SMU had probably the best team at that time that money could buy in college. So they were pretty stacked, and they were running up and down the field on us. And with about 4 minutes to go, we were down 20 points, and somehow we got the ball down and got it in the end zone once, and then kicked an onside kick, got it back, scored again, tried another onside kick. Didn't work this time, but the defense finally held Eric Dickerson and Craig James to less than a first down. They had to punt. We ended up blocking the punt, and we got the ball back with about 18 seconds left in the game, and we were on about their 45-yard line. And the first 2 passes I threw were incomplete, and then there was 3 seconds on the clock, and it's one of those, just Hail Mary play. Hey, somebody get in the end zone and either tip this ball or catch it, and let's win this game. And that's what happened.
That's awesome. And then so fast forward to the draft. What was your first experience like meeting Ditka?
I met him the night I was drafted. I flew into Chicago from Utah, and I met Coach Ditka on the way into the building. Actually, it was actually his first year as well, and then from that, it was just a brief hello. I had to go see George Hallis, old Papa Bear. He wanted to talk to me, and so that's where I was headed. So just a brief hello to the coach the first time I ever met him.
And then, what was your first experience meeting Walter Payton?
Oh, I've been asked that before, and I can't remember exactly the first time. It was probably at either a practice or maybe even a meeting first. But it wasn't one of those. I didn't know anything about Chicago. All indications were when I was going to get drafted was by the Baltimore Colts, and they drafted right ahead of Chicago. And I had been back to Baltimore. They kept telling me they're going to draft me. I had dinner at Johnny Unitas,
Oh, wow.
at his restaurant there in Baltimore. He said, "Oh yeah, you're going to love the city, this and that." And next thing I know, my attorney actually had a player that was on the Colts, running back, and they were having trouble signing that running back. So my agent told them, "Look, you're never going to sign me if you draft me." So they passed on me, and I ended up at Chicago on the next pick. So the only thing I knew about Chicago was Brian's Song, the movie, and my folks had met there in back in the 50s
Oh, cool.
during the Korean War, and that's where my older brother was born. But other than that, I didn't know anything about Chicago.
Interesting. And then I saw, is it true that you showed up to a team function, one of your first team functions, beer in hand?
Well, I was drafted. That's when I got out of the limousine. I'd just taken a 3-hour flight, about an hour drive to the facility, and there was beer in the limousine. So
Hey,
I was thirsty. Looked like I was 18 years old. I was almost 22. So yeah, I had a couple, and then as I got out of the car, there was a couple left, so I took them with me. And the press made a big stink about that.
Hey, no big deal. That's awesome. And then, what was the deal with Pete Rozelle and your headbands? I never got that.
Well, Pete had fined me the week before in our first playoff game, and for the Adidas headband that I'd been wearing all year long. But there was never a word said to me about the Adidas headband. But I found out later that Adidas at the time was not paying the NFL. So they imposed a fine on me for wearing the same thing I'd been wearing for the couple of years, actually. And so I knew they were going to fine me a lot more at the next game if I had worn it. So I figured, what else can I do? I was, 5 minutes before kickoff, I was deciding what to put on the headband, and hell, name on there. And I didn't get fined that week. He actually called and said, "Thank you for the free advertising." So that's what that was about.
That's wild. And then, so the 85 team, did you have a feeling early on that this team was meant for something more?
Well, we knew we were good in 80 at the end of 83 and 84. We were a pretty good football team then. We ended up going to the NFC Championship game in 84. And so we knew we were going to be pretty good in 85. And nobody probably could have predicted how good that, we eventually were, but as a team, we felt that we had a good chance of going to the Super Bowl and winning it that year.
Oh my God! And then you guys smoked them. It wasn't even close.
No. I would have much rather played the Dolphins because that was our only loss that year, was against the Dolphins in a game that I wasn't playing on Monday night.
Oh, really?
I'd like to get a better shot at the Dolphins. Probably would have been a hell of a lot better game too. But the way it worked out, it was great. Was happy to win that year, and unfortunately we didn't win anymore. But the following year, everybody forgot that we were 15-1 that year, and then the following year we went 14-2.
Wow!
It wasn't like we disappeared. We had home field advantage for 4 straight years in the playoffs. We just didn't take advantage of that.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's wild. And then fast forward a couple of years, and you're back on another Super Bowl team behind Brett Favre. What was that like? Just kind of later in your career.
It was more than a couple of years, about 11 years later, but it was exactly 11 years later that we played the Super Bowl down in New Orleans again on the same day and against the same team. So that was a pretty much deja vu for me to be down in New Orleans. But yeah, being with the Packers for a year and a half, it was a lot of fun. Brett was a good guy to play with. He was just loved to play the game. And we had a lot of fun in meetings and in practice, and he was a hell of a player.
And I have a side question. I saw recently you posted a picture with you and Michael Jordan. Did your paths cross early on in your career, right after he got drafted?
Yeah, we saw each other quite a bit in Chicago. I believe he got there in '84. I'm not positive. But yeah, we used to play a lot of golf together. I had him over to the house. We were playing pool together. I still see him every once in a while. He makes it up Lake Tahoe usually for that event that comes up in July. So yeah, we had some fun together for sure.
What were your thoughts on the Last Dance if you saw it? Would you enjoy it?
I saw a couple episodes of it. Yeah, I'd pretty much seen it live, so I didn't. There was a few things that I hadn't heard, but for the most part, it was a good trip down memory lane.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. That's awesome. And then so I'm in the DC area now. So you played with Ron Rivera. What do you think he can bring to an organization like the Redskins that they haven't had in some time?
Well, from his past record, I think he's a pretty good football coach. You know, he was good. He was a good player, smart player. You had to be smart to play in Buddy's defense. So that's why he got drafted. He was a smart player, tough kid, and now obviously he's done well as a head coach. So I'm sure that Redskins fans will enjoy what he brings to the table.
Absolutely. And then so you said you really don't really focus much on the pro game now, so you really don't really pay attention to it, or do you kind of keep up what's going on in Chicago?
No, I just keep up with friends, like you said, Rivera, Andy Reid's a good buddy of mine. I was finally happy to see him win a Super Bowl. He's been a great coach for a lot of years. He was my teammate at BYU, so I've known him.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
The late '70s. So he's put on a lot more pounds since then. But he's a coach, and I'm glad to see him win. I believe Leslie Frazier is still coaching in the league. Is one of our cornerbacks. Single coach for a little bit. So I just I check scores on ESPN like everybody else, and just see how those guys are doing.
Absolutely. Did you see a successful coaching career in a young Andy Reid, or was it a shock to you?
Yeah, I didn't really see him as a coach. He was my teammate, so I didn't know how good of a coach he was. But when I was with him in Green Bay, he was our tight ends coach the first year, or the second year I was there. I was there for like 5 games in '95, and then we won in '96, I believe. So for that first year and a half, he was the tight ends coach. I was very impressed with his coaching style. He relates to his players really well. And you got to love an old offensive lineman that loves to throw the football.
Absolutely.
Kansas City gets winging all over the place, and he loves that. He was a hell of an athlete himself, and he can probably still wing that ball about 60 yards. So.
That's fun.
But it's great to see him have some success.
Absolutely. And then, what have you been doing to keep busy during the pandemic? Is there anything you've been kind of putting a lot of time into?
I've been out here in my yard for about 3 months, just cutting down trees, transplanting cactuses.
Oh, cool.
And just trying to get it ready. I'm going to try to sell it soon.
Oh, cool.
Just downsize a little bit. But, that's pretty much all I've been doing. Everything that I've, was supposed to do has been canceled. So hopefully things will start picking up soon.
Definitely. And then okay, one last question for you. So when everything sort of starts going back to normal, or when everything kind of resumes to what it was, what's the first thing you're looking forward to doing?
Just seeing some friends I haven't seen in a while. I've usually played about probably 10 golf tournaments by now from January until now, and all over the country. So those have all been canceled, and usually that's the only time I get to see some of these guys. So that's what'll be fun, seeing some old friends and having a few cocktails.
Absolutely.